Dear friends, a very warm welcome to this seminar, Sports for Climate Action. My name is Johan Åkesson. I'm the Swedish ambassador to France, and I would really like to extend a very warm welcome to this seminar, which is organized by the Swedish Olympic Committee together with KTH Climate Action Center. I think it's great that the Swedish Olympic Committee has chosen this topic. We represent, as Swedes, a country which has come quite far when it comes to the green transition. And as we all know, the Paris Games are the most sustainable games in the Olympic history. I will now, without further ado, hand over to our moderator, Karin Loss-Dotter from KTH. But before doing so, I would like to express a hope that you will all join us for the reception right after this seminar upstairs in the presence of His Majesty the King of Sweden. Over to you, Karin.
Thank you so much, Håkan. And I'm very happy to be here at the Paris Olympics, and I'm very happy to see that there is such a great interest in the climate issues. And I'm also very happy to be here at the most sustainable and climate neutral Olympics ever, as Håkan just told us. So I think we are really moving in the right direction, and we are really understanding that this is something which is really important to sports, because climate change really have an impact on sports. We can see it already, and we will see it even more in the future, of course, and that is so nice, not so nice, because we will have more droughts, storms, floodings, and extreme temperatures, and lack of snow during winter for skiing, for example, and this, of course, affects both the competitions and the athletes. So the climate crisis is really obvious for the sports, and the sports have responded, the sports communities worldwide have responded and want to take responsibility and become climate neutral in accordance with the Paris Agreement. And how we can work with that, how the sports community can become climate neutral, that is something which we are going to talk about today. So the ambitions are there, and then just how to do that. But first of all, isn't sound okay? Yeah? I would like to welcome up the most important, one of the most important persons in sports, and then that is an athlete, and that is Johan Wissman, representing the athletes today. Welcome, Johan Wissman. He is a former athlete specializing in the 200 and 400 meters, and national record holder in Sweden in both these distances, and also you have been to the Olympic Games 2 times. It was in 2004 in Athens and 2008 in Beijing, where you were 8 in 400 meters. Welcome. I will start also to welcome up Mikael Gunnarzon, who is a sustainability responsible person at the Swedish Olympic Committee. You can be here. But first of all, you won as an active athlete. Did you ever think about carbon footprints or so?
I practiced my sport for on a high level for 18 years, and I got to travel all over the world on competitions and training camps. And for me, it was a bit challenging living in Sweden, especially during the winter and the cold months, because I usually search for warm weather, sunny weather, to be able to compete and train outdoors for the greater part of the year. And I thought that was essential for me to be able to compete and train at the same level as most of my competitors who lived on warmer places in the world. But during that time, it never really struck me that I could have a bad impact on the climate. Going back and forth, long distances by plane. For example, going to South Korea one day, running for 20 seconds, and then go back to Sweden the next day. Maybe I could have done it differently. when I was an athlete, the climate questions, of course, it started to get a little bit more in focus, but we never really had any discussions or with the federations, and we never really got any questions from media or sponsors and organizers. So at that time, I did the most to get as good as possible in my sport without really caring so much about the climate, actually. So,
Thank you, Johan. Then my question to Mikael, maybe. When you hear Johan telling you that, is that something you have seen, that there has been an increase in the understanding of the climate crisis among the athletes?
That's my understanding, yes. For the last 8 years, maybe, the climate challenging with the climate is higher up on the agenda for several athletes. So we have discussions when we have kind of a training camps. We have the discussions with athletes. They want to have help. How can they, as Johan told you, like perform on the highest level internationally without doing so much travel all the time? So it's a challenge.
So you have the interest from the athletes that you can see, but you also have some, I mean, you have worked, the Swedish Olympic Committee, you have your goals, haven't you? And I also that the United Nations, they have this declaration, Sports for Climate Action. That is more top-down policy level. Can you elaborate?
Yes, I'm very happy that our executive board took the decision that we should sign up for the UN Sports for Climate Action framework, which has very high ambitions. It means in reality that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% until 2030, compared with our base year line, 2021, was during the Tokyo Olympics. And then we are to achieve net zero by 2040. So it's a huge challenge for us. We have signed it. Now we just have to find the path and the strategy to comply with the framework and to achieve the goals.
Yeah, talking about that, I mean, Johan told us about he was flying to distant parts of the world. How are you working with that? That is also something we will discuss later, but just...
As one of the goals, or one of our core businesses, is to support athletes and coaches at the top levels. And that means that we have to be close to monitor, to be able to support, even if they are somewhere else. But we really have to think outside the box, I think, and to be brave and to try to change the way we work today. How can we keep up with international competition and still think about how we can do it with smarter solutions when it comes to the climate? And that's what the program actually is all about, to achieve a clear path for the sport community to combat climate change, actually, and doing that with partnerships and to measure and reduce and report.
Johan, last question for you. Just if you would have been an athlete now, would you have acted like you did, or is it different now from when you were active?
Yeah, most definitely. It started to get a little bit more on topic when I ended my career at 2017. And I mean, that's 8 years ago, and today we see effects on the climate almost every day in the world. So I think I would have made it a little bit different. Try to take decisions that are a little bit more sustainable for the climate. Still focus on getting as good as possible to maximize my performance and my development, but still do many small choices that are a little bit sustainable. I think I would have tried to do that, and with help, of course.
Yeah, great. Okay, we will thank you, Johan and Mikael, for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we are going to actually have a small change in the program. Right? Okay. Then I'm very happy to announce the next speaker, which is Samuel Ducroquet, the French ambassador of sport. Welcome. Oh, you are there. Thank you. Welcome. So happy to have you here. So you actually have an ambassador for sports in France. I think you should have a microphone. Here you have.
I just wanted to reduce my carbon footprint without using electricity, but sometimes comfort requires it, right?
Yeah. I would like to, I have read about the Paris arrangement, and I'm super impressed about all the figures. Do you want to just shortly present how is Paris more climate neutral, at least? Actually, you say the climate positive, etc. Can you just give us some facts?
Sure. In fact, what we wanted to achieve with the Paris 2024 Games was to foster a new kind of international major sporting event. We just didn't want to organize spectacular games, games more inclusive with a high level of solidarity, but also show that it was possible to do both while being responsible and sustainable from an environmental point of view, and actually a financial point of view as well. This is actually perfectly in line with our French diplomatic approach on the world stage when it comes to climate negotiations. It is in line with the COP21 negotiations in 2015, and this is the reason why we can say that the games are actually the first games in line with those 2015 agreement, and so was the Rugby World Cup previously. And we're also in line with the IOC 2020+5 agenda, which is an exceptional result. So we managed to, we've seen already that we managed to have the amount of CO2 emissions compared to the 2012 and 2016 editions. Tokyo 2020 was a bit different. You all remember what happened with the COVID crisis. Our benchmark is London and Rio. It is also in line with the organizations of all the negotiations in the field of climate environment that we organize. The One Planet Summit, the One Ocean Summit, all these important meetings and gathering that actually oblige us to be very ambitious, and this is the reason why we decided to have a very, very high level of ambition, to have a strong voice, and actually you're contributing to this today with the organization of this event. The fact that we organize spectacular games should not, and celebration, engagement should not divert us from our responsibilities. And this is the reason why we need to have a strong voice. We need to lead by example with the organization of events that are extremely responsible when it comes to the renewable energies, which is the case, the fact that venues are all connected to the energy grid and not to generators, and that is already a big difference, that the Olympic Village is something that is also very innovative when it comes to environment. So yeah, that is the level of ambition they set. And of course, for the future, we don't want only international major events to include this notion of climate protection, but also grassroots sports and daily, as you've mentioned, the practice of high-performance sports as well should take this into consideration on a daily basis. So in a nutshell, this is the political approach that we're trying to adopt when it comes to the international sporting events.
Thank you. I mean, you started with having the vision and the goals, being climate positive, etc. And now you have, as a pioneer, you always struggle with challenges and things you couldn't really foresee. Is there something that you can tell us about that maybe pass on to the next organizer, that this is a challenging thing? So.
Yeah, well, I think the first lesson for us was to ensure that there is a close coordination between all actors, all the stakeholders. The organizing committee cannot do it alone. So obviously the cooperation with the government, with the local government, also really matters. And we've seen this, for example, with transportation. the extension of the line 14 of the metro is something that will contribute to the fact that every single competition venue will be accessible by public transportation. The fact that together with the city of Paris and the other neighboring cities, 116 kilometers of cycling lanes will be left after the games to try to leave also some sort of a legacy. So this is the first takeaway lesson. The second one is that we need to set a level of ambition that is extremely high. And that is also the example of the village. The fact that the village is relies on renewable energies, that is using some of the sewage water to actually reutilize the brown waters for some specific uses. The fact that that we're using natural technologies, that we've planted thousands of trees within the village in order to use natural technique to cool down the village is something that is important. But also, that's from the domestic point of view. But from the international point of view, which matters to me as a diplomat, the compensation fund to compensate the unavoidable carbon emissions is also something that really matters to us. So 10.7 million euros were invested in a dozen of countries where a mitigation plan compensation projects were established in Guatemala, in DRC, in Kenya, in Senegal, with solar farms, with the fight against deforestation, with the development of the mangrove. So all natural initiatives that have a direct impact on our carbon footprint, but finally we need to change the mindset, and that is probably the hardest.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. You will be in the final panel as well, so I will invite you back to the stage, but thank you for now. And then we are going to move on to the next speaker, who is one of the leading experts in the world when it comes to transport research, and he's a researcher at KTH, Royal Institute of Stockholm, Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Jonas Åkesson. So please, you have prepared a presentation for us.
Yes, thank you, Colin. Yes, I will talk about the climate impact of long-distance travel, which actually poses a large challenge both to the society as a whole and for sports, of course. You can change slide, please. Thank you. Yes, and unfortunately there is no silver bullet that can solve the climate impact of this kind of travel. So we need to combine several measures in order to achieve the climate targets. One part of the solution is to change to low climate impact fuels, particularly biofuels, electrofuels, or hydrogen. Unfortunately, there are some challenges with these, of course. They are expensive. They cost like 2 to 5 times more than conventional fossil fuel. And especially for biofuel, there is a limited supply, and all sectors in society want these fuels. Hydrogen, often discussed, is a long-term option, but it will take decades to introduce that in air travel, since you need to renew all aircraft. You need to renew the whole fleet. Another part of the solution is to, and that is can be accomplished quite soon, is to shift to ground travel instead of air travel, in particular rail. Our research and other research at other universities show that we need to roughly half air travel per capita in high-income countries if we are to achieve the climate targets of Paris. That is the Paris Agreement in 2015, not particularly the Olympics. Okay, you can shift, Karin, please. Yes, this shows the emissions of greenhouse gases for traveling 1 kilometer for one person. And as you can see, the emissions from air travel is the highest. So if you change to any of the ground modes, you make big contribution for the climate, even if you change to car actually. But the best, of course, is to change to train or bus. The emissions from train depends quite a lot on the electricity system in a particular country. So in Sweden we have quite low emissions, while in Central Europe they are somewhat higher. You can change this. This shows, I took some examples of the emissions associated with traveling to Paris for the Olympics, and this is for a round trip by air. So for example, if you travel from Dallas in the USA, the emissions correspond to a little bit more than 2,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide. If you travel from Stockholm, it's nearly 400 kilograms of carbon dioxide. And for Hong Kong, 2,400 kilograms, and for Sydney, Australia, a little bit more than 4,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So it's quite large figures for these flights. You can change, please. Yes, thank you. So if we take the example of Stockholm-Paris, so as you could see on the previous slide, air travel has a high impact. It's nearly 400 kilograms for a round trip. Rail and bus are considerably lower. But then it's not always that you have to choose between either air or rail, for example. There are possibilities to combine these modes as well. If you, for example, want to go make this trip, if you take the train from Stockholm to Copenhagen and then fly from Copenhagen to Paris, instead of flying the whole way, you can still reduce emissions by 1/3. So, I mean, it's not as if you went by rail the whole way, of course, but it's still a significant reduction. Yes, you can change. Thank you. Yes, climate compensation is quite much discussed, I mean, in society and in the research world as well. And it should be seen as a last resort, but you have tried all the other ways of reducing emissions. For the Paris Games, as Samuel mentioned, there are, for example, to conserve and restore forests and oceans, and also providing better cook stoves in developing countries are examples of compensation projects. There are some critical requirements for these compensation projects, and that is that they should add to what would have happened if they were not carried out. And they should also be lasting over time. For example, if you plant a forest, it must be standing there for maybe 30 or 40 years. So these requirements are quite challenging, which means that the intended emissions are quite often not achieved. So, as I said, then it should be really seen as the last resort if you cannot do anything else. I think I'll stop there. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you so much, Jonas. We were supposed to have a small dialogue here. We will save that for the final dialogue, but we say thank you, Jonas, with an applause. But I just have one follow-up question for you, Jonas, and that is, I mean, you gave us the figures. It's, for example, it's more than 2,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide from the US to Paris, for example. Can you compare that to the budget for 1 year per person in the world, if we're going to reach the Paris Agreement? Where are we? Because it can be quite hard to know, is it much or is it not so much?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on if you aim at 1.5 degrees or 2.0 degrees. But if you aim for a little bit to the lower end there, it could be possible to emit around 1,000 kilograms per capita worldwide. But that then includes all sectors. That's for buildings, for industry, for all travel, etc. And of course, long distance travel is only a part of that.
I think it's quite important to know that the proportions. So actually, air flying is quite demanding on the climate. So thank you again, Jonas, and we will go for the next speaker, who is a guest here at the Uniqlo. It's let's just shift. Okay, there we are. I would like to say welcome to Louise Guillaume from Uniqlo. You are a sustainability manager here at, and you are going to talk about the company and then you work with sustainability.
Well, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here. So I'm Louise, working for Uniqlo Europe. So a bit, I don't know if you have the slides. Thank you. So Uniqlo is part of the fast retailing group, one of the first biggest apparel retailer in the world. And Uniqlo is one of the largest brands of fast retailing. What you might not know is Uniqlo was founded in 1984 in Japan by Mr. Yanai, who is still the CEO today of our company. Uniqlo is now a truly global brand. We have actually more stores outside of Japan, and in Europe we have 70 stores, including 3 in Sweden. Something which is absolutely important about Uniqlo is lifewear. At Uniqlo, we aim at making clothes that we want to wear often and for a long time. And this is what we call the lifewear. Lifewear philosophy is first inspired by life's needs, ingenious in detail, simple and adaptable to everyone's style, looking ahead to constantly evolved, and the highest quality made available to everyone. So this is really what is our philosophy at Uniqlo. How do we join that with sustainability? So this is what we call our butterfly around the sustainability strategy of Uniqlo. And I would love for you to focus on the right-hand side of sustaining lifewear. And one of the things which is going to be useful for our next conversation about materials is the fact that in every Uniqlo store, you'll find donation boxes where you can actually give your clothes, and those will be reused or recycled. But just before going to the sustainability part, just a short precision about the collaboration in between Uniqlo and the Swedish Olympics and Paralympics Committee. We started the collaboration in 2019. Paris is the third collaboration after China and Japan. And I think what is super important also is it's a collaboration which is co-created with the athletes. So it's a really close collaboration together. So going to sustainability, we are super proud today that 98% of the collection is made with recycled materials. We've been really working at getting better, and from Tokyo we had 33% of the materials were recycled materials. Today 50% of the materials used in the collection are made with recycled materials, so that we've been really improving and really working in collaboration with the Swedish team to have this inclusion of recycled material within our collection. And for the first time in our collaboration, we now have also a molecular recycled material. So what is that? So those collection boxes that you have seen maybe in the stores of Uniqlo, well, those clothes have been used to create new clothes. So fiber to fiber clothes. So 16 of those clothes, of those models are from close to close recycled, and we've produced a bit more than 5,000 of those products. And you can have an example right here of the famous Swedish T-shirt. And also, so of course, including more recycled materials has reduced the GHG impact of the collection, but also it's also working on what the life were, meaning that what is the necessity, the simplicity. And from the Tokyo Games, we have reduced also the number of items from 20%. So meaning that some of the T-shirt can be used for different uses. It's also a unisex collection. So that's how also we've been working on reducing the GHG impact of the collection. And finally, durability, as we've talked at the beginning on Lifewear, is key. We want products that will be used for a long time, durable. We test those products, we make sure that they can be used for a long time. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Welcome up again, Mikael Gunnarzon from Swedish Olympic Committee, Sustainable Responsible there. Can you please tell me a little bit about the collaboration with the sponsor Uniqlo and how you have thought about the sustainability?
Yes, it's a very interesting collaboration and also a step in the right direction. When I meant like we have to have partners that are engaged in the environment and in the climate change. And Uniqlo is doing a fantastic work. We have to report our emissions, and of course the garments for the Olympics. It's a huge project, and they are collaborating very good. And as you explained, that we can use so much recycled clothes for making this collection is fantastic as we see it. And if you think about it in a bigger picture, it's like we can control some stuff, but if you look at the whole value chain, this is an example that really makes a global impact. If we can reduce the emissions of one T-shirts that are sold globally, then you can imagine, if you calculate a bit, how much that reduces the emissions globally. So we are very grateful for the collaboration with Uniqlo. Thank you for that.
And we're very proud, and I think that's also how you work as a company, is with having partners which also push us for being better. And I think the collaboration with the Swedish Olympic and Paralympics has pushed us to create and innovate. And I hope that will continue.
Great. Great to hear that. That's a really good example. So you mentioned that by working with kind of in the Olympics, by having this as a case, so to say, you can gear up also the climate work for the global consumption. That is what you say. So that is an example of how sports and activities can actually contribute to more than the sports activities themselves. So the limits are increasing. Okay, then one more thing, and that is in the IPCC report that came last year, but they talk quite much about the demand side, that we should use less energy, use less materials, use less. Is that something which you consider as well? I mean, in addition to seeing that the material that we actually use is recycled, so, but using less. How do you see on that?
As she explained, we have less items in the collection. We have the same clothes on the opening ceremony as the closing ceremony. It's the Lifewear thought, where you can use the garment on several occasions. It's on the podium. You can use it in the training arena. So the thought has been there all the way, and through the collaboration to get this collection in place. So absolutely, we think about the demand.
And a bit further away from just only the collection, which is already a massive move, we also work on reparation. So since 2 years, we've been launching Uniqlo Studios. So if you go to Le Marais store, Opera store, Rivoli store in Paris today, which are not very far away, you can find those studios. And we really want also our customers to say, okay, I have something, a hole, whatever, I can repair and wear longer my clothes. So that's very important. And as we've discussed, materials are super important. We are working also on more innovation, other types of materials. It can be like pre- and post-consumer cotton. We do have a lot of wool, cashmere, so we're working on that. We have linen, a lot of linen product, and you might not know that linen is produced at 80% in the north of Europe, in France and Belgium and the Netherlands. So this is just an holistic view. And of course, it's also how we work with our producers, which represent our scope 3 emission, and this is where also we act on energy and also GHG emission.
Thank you so much, Louise and Mikael. Thank you. We are very soon going to let our researcher Anne have a presentation, but I will just take the opportunity to also show you some figures from other researchers at KTH that could not attend because they are on vacation. And they are actually doing research on carbon footprint from consumption from sports events. And this is a figure, I don't know if you can see it, but they have compared the different parts of consumption around a cycling event called Vätternrundan in Sweden. And there you can see that the socks and the cycling shirt and the shorts, etc., they are quite small, but they are still there, of course. We have been talking about textiles, but they are here, and the shoes are a little bit higher. But then you can see the road bike and the indoor bicycle trainer, etc., they are much bigger in when it comes to carbon dioxide emissions. But when you also add the trips, training camps in Sweden are here, going to the camps. You can see you have the trainers here, the bikes here still, but then you have the training camps abroad. If you add that on, you have a totally different figure here. So you can see the relation between the different kind of emission sources there. So that is just an example of other research results from KTH that we have. But now I would like to hand over to Anne Legeby, a researcher at KTH, and she's a professor of applied urban design. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you so much. Yes, this presentation is about sports and sustainability, and more precisely how we can plan and design our cities to promote more sustainable and just cities, including sustainable transportation. So today we have a transport sector that causes as much as 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions in Sweden. And in some cities, this share is even higher. For example, in Uppsala, the transport sector causes as much as half of the greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. And in this research project, Mistra Sport and Outdoors, we have looked at how sport and outdoor activities could decrease their emissions. There is a great potential to start a movement and new habits, as much as 1/3 of the Swedish population are engaged in sport activities and associations and are part of this sport community that you discussed here before. And if we look at the leisure trips, they are growing, and we can see that trips with cars has a share of 62%, and this must change in future. Next, please. And decreasing physical activity is a growing societal problem. In Sweden, we can see that only 2 of 10 children reach the recommended level of physical activity, and that children from low-income groups have lower activity than children from high-income groups. Looking at adults, we can see that 22% of men and 25% of women in Sweden do not reach the recommended physical activity level. And at the same time, 80% of the trips in cars with cars in cities are only 3-4 kilometers. And this is a distance that is possible for walk and bike for many people, but at least also use public transportation. Next, please. So in this research study, we have developed the methods of analyzing accessibility to different sport facilities on a very detailed level, from the address points from the whole city of Uppsala in this case. And to this, we add socioeconomic background. So on the map, you can see in the red colors, they have high access to indoor sport facilities, and the blue colors have low access. And this can inform the city planners and urban designers how they could locate sport facilities so that inhabitants can reach them easily, both by car, biking, or with public transportation. And this in order to promote equal and just cities, where climate and health goes hand in hand. And next, please. And this last slide, this is a matrix where one can see which neighborhoods have high and low access respectively. On the top there is the high access, and on the bottom in the blue colors are low access. And we also add to this the income levels. So it's highly problematic when there are low income groups that also have low access to urban resources. And urban resources such as sport facilities or sport opportunities. And this situation is driving segregation and urban inequalities. And to conclude here, this study suggests that urban planners need to change how we plan for sport facilities, and we need to take into account accessibility and for who, for which group in society. The sport associations can do a lot and plan their training and competitions so that it is possible to use sustainable modes of transportation. And the athletes and the active people can also do a lot by changing their practices and habits. So, to conclude, it's urgent to reach a change and build a socially sustainable city and climate friendly. And it's just to start from all these positions and actors, and you can contribute in different ways to change this situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. So a follow-up question for you, Anne, before we go to the final panel, and that is, can you see, is it good or is it bad as it is now, and can you see any trends? Are we doing better, or is it not happening?
We have mapped a few cities, and we can see that very often there are low-income groups that actually suffer from poor accessibility. And we also know that, the access to cars in these households are very low. So maybe they are actually not given the same opportunities to be active. And I think that it's actually being a bit worse, because now we look a lot of when we are locating sport facilities, we look very much in a short perspective. So you look at the economy to build this facility, but you don't really take into account how it will stay there and how people will get to and from this specific place. So we can do a lot by also having a longer perspective and taking the consequences for a longer perspective than what we do today.
Thank you so much. Then I would like to invite back both Mikael Gunnarzon from the Swedish Olympic Committee and the sport ambassador from France, Samuel Ducroquet. Welcome back on stage. And then we are going to have a small discussion between the researchers and who are kind of policymakers. So actually, you have from the top. So, and we will let you in the audience as well in a few minutes, but we will start anyhow. And I would like to start with you, Jonas. I know that you have read both the reports from the sustainability climate work in the Paris petition, but also the documents from the Swedish Olympic Committee, etc. What are your comments to these?
Well, I think the ambitions are really good. And of course, you can do a lot regarding trips to competitions. You can choose sometimes between competitions, destinations, but you can also choose means of transport. However, I think maybe the biggest potential is regarding training, where you place training camps. And I think one thing that you should have in mind is to have a systems perspective. Often it is you place a training camp for another climate. If you are into the Summer Olympics, you want warm weather, and if you're Winter Olympics, then you want cold weather. So you can get this climate by having indoor facilities. One example is indoor cross-country tunnels that you can use in Sweden in the summertime. And these are quite energy intensive actually, but they may anyway be better than these extensive flying. So you have to look at each case for themselves, but I think you could have more attention to this.
Thank you, Jonas. I will ask you, because you are working a lot with social sustainability, but also climate. Do you have any comments for the Paris organization or the work with from the Swedish Olympic Committee? From what you have heard here today.
I think this is very positive news that this is, as someone said here before, more on top of the agenda. And I'm happy to see that a lot of actions are taken and interventions. And of course, we also need from the research community then to provide more background information and facts about what are the important things to change. But we can already now see that we do a lot that could be changed, both in a short perspective and in a long-term perspective. So I'm happy to see this, and hopefully it will be also a movement, because as I said before, the sport community, there are so many things happening every day in Sweden, and all these competitions and training, and can we change just a little bit, it would have a big impact.
Thank you, Anne. I will hand over to you, Samuel Ducroquet. Do you have any comments or thoughts that when you heard the researchers? Or
Yeah, what struck me when I heard the research is the word last resort, which you've mentioned, Jonas. And this is true that when I talked about the compensation programs, it was meant for the, as I said, unavoidable emission CO2 emissions that were produced. It is true that we need to anticipate rather than compensate the emission of the carbon footprint. But what strikes me as well in this discussion is the dilemma we're facing between infrastructures and transportation. And then maybe I should hand it over to scientists. But we've only built 95%. I mean, we had 95% of the infrastructures existing or temporary in order to avoid the construction costs. But on the other hand, if we want to do this, we have sometimes to organize events outside the city of Paris. So, like we did with the shooting in Châteauroux, or the sailing, obviously, in Marseille. The Seine was busy, but in the end, of course, we have to make the people fly there or take the train to the venue. And I think the future mega sporting events will face this dilemma even more, and we will as well in 2030 for the Winter Games. We've decided to organize with the Northern and Southern Alps to try to use the existing infrastructures, but in the end, we're gathering the world at one point to actually celebrate the games and have this unique moment of togetherness. So this is, I don't have the answer, unfortunately, to this dilemma, but we'll have definitely to find solutions to preserve the environment we live in.
Thank you, Mikael Gunnarzon.
Yeah, my final thought is I think we have to be brave. We have to try new methods, and it's up to everyone to do a change. That's how it's going to be done. No one else can do it, so we have to try to do it together.
Do you mind if I pick it up on this? Because I had a question myself. You know, we've taken bold measures when it comes to the AC at the village, for example. Because we built the village according to the 2050 standards, and we took this. We made this decision not to have the AC as an initial comfort provider. And we've heard a few criticisms here and there. So I would be interested to hear your point of view on the matter, because as we've both mentioned, we need to take initiatives and take bold measures. So
we trust in the French. So we had, of course, to choose climate, AC or not. And we choose to believe that the system will work if we have good routines, shades down on the days to keep the sun out, and trust the system. We had 11 medals until now. The goal was 10. So obviously we succeeded. We have had very few complaints. And we saved about 800,000 crowns that we can do something else with sport instead of renting ACs for 2 weeks. So we were happy that you made the village functional for us. Thank you.
Actually, we have a few minutes left, so I will open the floor up to you in the audience. If you have any questions for the researchers or for the other speakers here, to just take the opportunity and ask them. We have one. Do we have another microphone? No. So, and please say who you are.
All right. Hi, my name is Olof Byström. I am an economist here at the OECD in Paris. I wanted to first congratulate the ambassador here for a very successful organization of the Games. Thank you very much. Paris is working wonderfully during these Games. But I was wondering, regarding the offsets that you must have procured and the trees that you have planted to offset the emissions during the game. Can you comment on both how much of the percentage of offsets that were used, and then also perhaps on how you secure quality of the offsets that you are using? Thank you.
Wow, it's getting technical. I think if I remember well, the amount of offset was 1.5 million TEQ of CO2. By the number of programs that were introduced around the world, but the question of quality is also extremely important. And I know that the projects, I'll have to look a bit more into details about the way they make sure that the quality of the project is conducted. But I know that this was a priority, and that they really wanted to make sure it was up to the expectations. But in addition to that, you must know, or maybe you already know, that there will be a 360 impact study conducted by the French government in order to evaluate the impact of the climate and sustainability policy in the 2024 Games. So, as I said at the very beginning of my intervention, every stakeholder is directly responsible for this very ambitious goal. So we'll be able to tell in the month to come what are the real consequences, what are the real impacts of our methodology, and I look forward to discussing with you, since you're at OECD. Maybe we'll get a chance to meet again in the future and share the expertise provided by the report. But yeah.
Thank you so much. We have a question there.
Hello, my name is Elisabeth du Petit-Toire. I'm Swedish, but been living here for 40 years. I am thinking about all the souvenirs that we see everywhere. It's going to be quite a lot of waste. Of course, it's a part of the Olympic Games, but maybe we can think about that. It was very interesting to hear about the clothing, and maybe somebody is bright enough to find another solution there. I've been living and working in the Alps, and now the future will be there, I hope, 2030. So that will be a challenge. And I'm also thinking about what we're eating. Some of the athletes, they are more aware about that. Maybe that's also something we can think a little more about. Thank you for a very interesting seminar.
Do you have any comments, both Mikael and Soet?
The souvenirs is not my thing. The pins is another question, because everyone is changing pins. That has to be developed every time it's an Olympics. Is that sustainable or not? But what we have done in the Swedish house in the Olympic Village this time is just having small decorations, trying to have a good environment inside to be able for the athletes and coaches to perform on their best. Not so much on the outside, not much own coffee shops or grills or whatever countries are bringing in, because to Paris they have everything. You just have to go 50 meters to grab a coffee, so you don't have to have it inside your house if you don't want to. So thinking a little bit on those things, I think that will make a big difference in the future.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the memorabilia and the souvenir, except that, of course, it generates revenues, so it's still useful for an organizing committee. But what the organizing committee has tried to do as well is reduce actually the non-indispensable memorabilia of the games. One example, for example, the torch relay. Maybe you remember that in Tokyo or the previous games, the torch bearers could actually purchase the torch. If you think that we had 11,000 torch bearers for Paris 2024, they decided not to allow people to buy the torch, and they only produced, I think, 2,000 instead of 11,000 torches, which reduces by that many the amount of steel and the carbon footprint of the production of such products. So yeah, there are some things that we don't want to cut, like our fridge that are super successful. And but when it comes to those products, we did our best to produce locally when we could. We didn't always manage to. We have to acknowledge that, and some of them were produced in China because there is no sufficient production factories in France for those stuffed animals, if they're animals. But if we can keep on improving edition after edition, I think we're on the right track.
And when it comes to food also, that is something we know that vegetarian food is more climate friendly, and I know that you have some figures on that as well.
Yes, it is also, it's in the same line as the AC. We try to produce locally, as much as possible. The sourcing was a very important decision taken. It had also an impact on the people who are used to experiencing the games, because it was not the usual worldwide menus that we had, although there were 4 stations representing food from all over the world, but using as much as possible local products. So yeah, there were some things that you couldn't find usually. There were some more vegan, more vegetarian food offered to athletes. Yeah, there were a few criticisms, but as we said earlier, we were ready to take those initiatives. We knew that we had to bring sustainability a step forward, and if we have to suffer from a few criticisms here and there, we'll take them.
So that is the last word, that they have brought the sustainability a step forward, because we have to end this session. To thank the speakers here on stage and sitting in here, and also Jonas and Ann speaking from remote positions. Thank you so much. So with this session, I also thank you in the audience, and take the opportunity to ask questions also during the reception that starts now. So thank you again.